Welcome to Headliners of Service, our virtual speakers series presented by the Global Service Institute at Long Island University, featuring engaging conversations with exceptional leaders from all walks of life. These inspiring, timely, and fascinating discussions are hosted by Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby, the chair of the Global Service Institute. Today's headliner is Joe Theismann, legendary Super Bowl quarterback and NFL analyst. He's also the author of a newly released book, How to Be a Champion Every Day, 6 Timeless Keys to Success. During this presentation, we invite all of you to ask questions in the Q&A box, and we will have our guest answer as many as possible later in the program. You can also email them right now to questions@globalserviceinstitute.org. Everyone, please welcome Rita Cosby.
And hello, everybody. I am Rita Cosby, the chair of the Global Service Institute at Long Island University. And welcome to another one of our great headliners of service. And our headliner today is someone that I've had the pleasure of knowing for decades. He is a Super Bowl quarterback, but he is also a super human being and someone who really epitomizes service on and off the field. Joining us now is the NFL great, Joe Theismann. Joe, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Rita. It's great to be with you. Appreciate it very much, and certainly appreciate what you do and what Global Service Institute does to be able to help so many people.
Thank you. And you know, Joe, I have to mention, of all the great titles you have, one of my favorite titles, and I think hopefully all of our audience too, is that you are a board member. You're one of our honorary advisory board members for the Global Service Institute. So we are so honored to have you a part of this incredible journey, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, I want to start from the very beginning with you. And I want you to know, when we put this out, we have so many fans from all over the world who sent in a whole bunch of questions for you. But I want to start a little bit of your background because your story is so extraordinary and so inspiring, Joe Theismann. You were a young guy. Here you are. You grew up in South River, New Jersey. You had 2 really hardworking parents, right? Good role models.
Yeah, mom and dad. My dad owned a gas station for 25 years and worked at my uncle's liquor store for 25 years. And, you know, he had exactly 1 hour for dinner. He left either the gas station or the store at 5 o'clock. He was home at 5:15. From 5:15 to 5:45, we had dinner, and Dad was gone until 10 o'clock that night. And so really, you know, my mom worked at Boy Scouts of America and Squibs, which was in New Brunswick, New Jersey, most of my, you know, adolescent years. And my grandmother was really the one that took care of me to a large degree. And so I grew up in a house 2 blocks away from my high school where they had all the athletic fields in the world. And that was at a time where you just walked out the door in the morning and you showed up for dinner and went back out and started to play some more. But I was very, very blessed. Mom and Dad were wonderful people. They are wonderful people. And, you know, I learned a work ethic from my dad. I mean, he put a lot of time in. And then also, one of the things that really has always stayed with me, and I talk about it in the book, is people have asked about heroes. And we in the world of athletics get that label quite often. You're my hero, and we appreciate it, trust me. But the real heroes in my life are my dad. And when I think of heroes today, I think of the men and women that put on a uniform that defend us, whether they're firemen, policemen, military people. And anytime you get a chance to say thank you to someone in uniform, take the time to do it, because they're really there for you, to protect you. But I'll never forget my dad on a Sunday. He would be exhausted. He'd work 6 days a week, 13 hours a day. Sunday was his time to have dinner or lunch and sit down in his easy chair. And little Joey would come running up to him all the time and say, "Come on, Dad, let's go out and throw the ball around. Let's go out and throw the ball around." My father would always get up out of that chair, Rita, and he would always go out and play ball with me, knowing full well that within 5 minutes, my buddies would come by on my way to the high school, on my way to the athletic fields, and I'd say, "Okay, Pop, catch you later," throw him my mitt and run away. But never once did my father ever say to me, "Joey, look, how about if you just let me rest in this chair a little bit? I know you're going to be gone with your buddies in just a few minutes. He never ever said no. He always made the effort to try and be there for me, whether it was for 1 minute or 2 hours. And I always appreciate that. When people ask me about my hero, my dad was my hero. In my, I guess I have a lot of my mother in me, but my father was the guy that was there. And to be honest with you, while my dad was working on Saturdays, my mom had a heck of an arm. I mean, she could catch a football, she could throw a football. I was very lucky that way. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are in a different situation, but it still doesn't change the fact that someone out there is your hero. They don't have to have the label of a mom, dad. It could be a grandparent.
Absolutely.
It could be a friend.
I want to bring up to you.
Could be anybody. And that's really what we do at Global Services Institute is we want to reach out to everyone, the young as well as those that are more seasoned as far as individuals go.
Absolutely. Joe, you brought up your mom. And one of the things I love, and by the way, I have your book here. I love your book. It's extraordinary, Joe. And it's such a roadmap, and we're going to get to that. I have a whole bunch of questions too for you on it. But I want to ask you, your mom, you have momisms in your book.
Yes.
And I think for so many people who are watching this right now, and you talk about how your dad and your mom were both role models, but your mom had a momism. And one of my favorites that you mentioned, Joe, was you said that she said, you can find the worst in people or the bad in people. It's easy to find, but you can also find the best of people. She really taught you about attitude and mindset, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it was basically you can go look for the two things in people. You can go look for the bad in people, or you can go look for the good in people. And the neat part is I always try and look for the good in people. I think everybody has goodness in them. And so for me, it was just a question of being able to, take the things that my mother shared with me and let people know that, she was a part of my life, a big part of my life, a big influence in my life. She was the more stern one. Dad would always defer something to mom, but when you really got in trouble, the words you did not want to hear is, "I'll tell your father when he gets home." Those are words you did not want to hear. And so mom was, like I said, I was very blessed and very lucky. And my mother and father's combined income growing up, Rita, was $12,000 when we were kids growing up. I mean, I had a baseball. I had everything that every other kid had. I had a baseball, but when the cover fell off, we used to put the black tape on it. And then I had a baseball that had black tape on it. And I had a bat. And when the bat broke, we put a nail in it, wrap it up with some more tape. So, and when I had a baseball glove and the rawhide got old and tattered, I'd put in shoelaces. So I had everything that everybody had. It just wasn't new, but it didn't matter. It just didn't matter. I had everything that every kid had, and they were modified to a large degree. So it was great.
You were also taught early on, and I think Joe too, is that work ethic, like you talk about, but also to have confidence in yourself, because you were told, and here you were. I mean, you have had one of the most extraordinary careers. People always call sort of overachiever. I mean, your life is really such a extraordinary, I think, role model for young people and old, men and women. There's so many lessons from your life, Joe, that are just extraordinary and so inspiring. But I think about early on, here's Joe Theismann, MVP, Super Bowl quarterback. You were also told, you're not tall enough, you're not big enough, sure. You can't be an athlete. But you didn't listen to that.
No, I think people, sometimes if you're successful, people don't want you to be successful because they don't have the initiative to want to try as hard as you did. It seems like when anybody gets to the top of the mountain, they don't like them anymore. I had a conversation with a guy yesterday. We were talking about, Tom Brady. For years, I didn't like Tom Brady. I said, well, why? Well, he won so much. Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with wanting to win? What's wrong with wanting to be successful? I think too often we rely on other people to be able to gauge our desires in life. I think we have to have our own dreams. We have to have our own goals. We have to have a vision in our life of where we want to go. What do we want our life to look like? And one of the things I stress so often is to write down goals. In sports, we write down goals. In business, we write down goals. But yet in our own lives, I checked out some research. Over 90% of the people in this world refuse to take a pen in hand and write down a goal. And so I ask them simply to do this. 4 areas I'd like you to write down. He goes professional, spiritual, personal, and financial. Professional, spiritual, personal, and financial. What do you want in life? It's not an easy task. It's not easy to sit down and think about what do I want in life. But once you set your life on a path, you have an opportunity now to be able to try and achieve the goals that you set down. And they're not in stone. They change as we change in time. I do mine on an annual basis. And sometimes, 6 months, you got to modify it a little bit. But at least it gives you some foundation, a foundation to go on and to move forward on something.
You and I did an interview yesterday on Fox, and I thought what was really interesting, speaking of goals, it starts with you first thing in the morning. And the question was asked, what's sort of the advice? And your advice, it's a very simple one, but it's a fascinating one. Make your bed, because then you won't want to get back in it.
That's right. I mean, it's plus the other thing is if you make your bed in the morning, when you get up, you've actually accomplished something. So if you don't do anything else the rest of the day, you've accomplished something. And it starts there. And the other thing we talked about, one of the things I think is important is in this crazy world we're living in, I think we have to take time for ourselves. So much, you and I were here with Global Service Institute. We want to serve others. We want to do everything we can for other people. But you can't ignore yourself. You can't get so consumed in other people's lives and other things that are going on that you forget about who you are. You have to stay grounded in who you are and like who you are. It's okay to like who you are. I mean, I've been accused of being cocky and egotistical, and I probably have stretched that out at times, but I have a firm belief.
You mean a Super Bowl quarterback is cocky?
Sometimes. But I believe if you don't believe in who you are, who's going to believe in you? It really starts with us. And so many of the things I talk about in the book, the world of business, the world of sports, and our own lives, they all parallel one another. That was the foundation of the writing of the book. As I observed these different things through an extended period of my life, I found out we were talking about the same things. We were talking about opportunity, talking about goals, talking about attitudes, talking about teamwork. Customer service is nothing more than people relationships. And how do we get motivated to do the things that we want to do in our lives? I mean, what motivates you? Everybody's different. My feet hit the floor in the morning. My wife, I drive her nuts because I'm up and flying. I mean, as soon as my feet hit the floor, I'm gone. I mean, what's going on? I sleep very well, but when I get going, it's time to go. And I'm sure there are many people like that out there.
And also so many people are watching this, and Joe, we have folks, of all ages watching this. And it's been a very difficult time, as in the world and in the country. And you look at the effects of what's happened with the pandemic, I think it is harder and harder sometimes for people to get up and going and make their bed. So I think there's so many important lessons that you have right now that could be applied, especially right now. It's so critical for people to use this time to be maybe introspective and to think about how they can give back and make a difference with others and themselves.
Yes. You bring up a very interesting scenario, Rita. By helping other people, you're really helping yourself grow. Now, I'm 100% convinced that we're put on this earth to serve, not to be served. Now, I will tell you, there was a time in my life, I was the MVP of the National Football League. I was a world champion quarterback. I was the 4th highest paid player in the National Football League in the early 80s at $1 million a year, which is a little bit different than where it is today. But good for the guys that are getting the money. Good for anybody who can get what they can. And when you work hard for something, you should be rewarded. And that's just, that's the ethic we were all raised with. But the important thing is I learned my lesson. I was all self-consumed. It was all about me. What could I get? And I'm not proud of it. But there's a lot of things as we look back at our lives, we wish maybe we would have looked at a little bit different. But can you grow and learn from it? That's the most important thing, is are you able to look at your life honestly? Can you look in a mirror honestly and have a candid conversation with that person? Can you honestly say, well, you have to stop doing this, or you need to take care of that, or these are things that you need to think about more? That's the conversation we need to have. And, going through this pandemic, it certainly is not easy. The businesses are out there being shut down. I mean, there's pressure. We have to wear masks. You have to social distance, depending upon what state you live in. I mean, you can't travel from one to another. There's so many restrictions and things going on in our lives. But the most important thing is everybody says, I want to go back to normal. There will be no normal. Don't even think about going back to what normal might have been. There will be a new normal for you. And what this has done in football, we have a bye week. And during that bye week, teams don't study opponents, they study themselves. So what we've been able to do over this particular year, I hope for so many people, is examine ourselves, the relationship that we have with ourselves, the relationships that we have in business, the relationships that we have with our families, with our partners, with our loved ones. Those are the things that you have to examine now. If you haven't done it now, it's going to be too late because things are starting to open up again. And I don't look at life this way as a change as much. I look at it as an opportunity. That's my favorite word. We're presented with opportunities in life, just like you and I are having a chance to have a conversation now to introduce people to the Global Service Institute, to be able to open up people's thoughts and minds to the possibility of service. And it doesn't matter how you do it. But like I said, I mean, helping somebody across the street, helping somebody with groceries, helping a charity in need, giving your time. Maybe you don't have the resources financially to do something, but time you do have. And this is where, and part of that you time that I talk about, that time for ourselves, is taking a little bit of that and giving it to someone else or doing something for someone else.
Bravo, bravo. And I want to get to a bit of the service too, even more so, because you are so heavily involved in it, Joe. First, I obviously have to talk about some of these incredible moments of your life. By the way, you could have been, a lot of people don't realize that, you could have been a baseball player, right, with the Minnesota Twins. So you made some choices. You still have the contract, right?
I do, yeah. I got drafted by the Minnesota Twins in I think the 77th round or something like that. So, or 66th round, something like that. I love baseball. Is actually my first love. It was. When I started, before I started football, my mom wouldn't let me play football for a few years until one of my buddies came to the house dressed in a football uniform. And Tommy Barra was his name. Tommy's a former FBI agent. And Tommy walked up to the house when I was 12 years old. It was my last year of eligibility in Pop Warner football. And Tommy came to the house dressed in a full uniform, helmet, shoulder pads, thigh pads, the whole 9 yards. He walked up and he said, at that time, I was Joey Theismann, walked up and said, Mrs. Theismann, I just want you to know this is the kind of protection that Joey's going to get. And so my mom let me play football. And that's when it started for me at the age of 12, when I started playing football. But baseball before that, I was a little leaguer and just really enjoyed it. Had a trial with the Pittsburgh Pirates many years ago. And like I say, I still have my $500 contract from the Minnesota Twins. I'm very proud of that.
Wow. Oh, you still have it. That's amazing.
Oh,
By
yeah.
the way, we did have a number of fans who wrote in. One of them actually wrote in and asked about the name change. Tell us about the Theismann. Is it a Theismann Heisman?
Well, actually, you're close. It was 1970 at the University of Notre Dame. We just had a really good junior year, and I had a particularly good year. So Roger Baldessari, our public relations director, called me in the office. He said, Joe, how do you pronounce your last name? I said, it's Theismann. He said, no, actually, it's pronounced Theismann. I said, no, my last name is pronounced Theismann. He said, no, Joe, your last name is pronounced Theismann. I said, give me the phone. Picked up the phone, called my father back home in New Jersey. Dad, I got a question for you. He says, fire away, Joe. What's your question? I said, Dad, how do you pronounce our last name? And there's this pause on the phone. My dad comes on about 30 seconds later. He says, son, are you okay? That you're a senior in college. You don't know what your last name is. What's going on? I said, I'll explain it later. Just tell me, how do you pronounce our last name? He said, Theismann. And I turned to Mr. Roger Baldessari, our PR guy. I said, Roger, look, I just got off the phone with my dad. My last name is Theismann. He said, Joe, I want to tell you something. There's a trophy out there called the Heisman Trophy. Goes best college football player in the country. We think you have a chance to win that trophy, but we're not just going to count on your athletic ability, nor the reputation of the University of Notre Dame. But what we're going to do is we're going to change the pronunciation of your last name from Theismann to Theismann to rhyme with Heisman, because we think we can get you that trophy. And that's how I became Joe Theismann. In 1970, Roger changed my name. And people yell at me all the time and say, oh, you changed your name. I didn't do it. Roger did it. And it was really the first time, I think it was probably the first time that there was any type of a conscientious campaign for someone to try and get the Heisman Trophy. Jim Plunkett won it that year. We had an unbelievable group of guys from the quarterback. Archie Manning was in that class.
Wow.
Dennis Dummett out of UCLA, Chuck Hickson out of SMU, Rex Kern out of Ohio State, Jim Plunkett out of Stanford, Dan Pastorini out of Santa Clara, and I was at Notre Dame. And it was, those are the guys that all played quarterback in that particular senior year. So we have a pretty good record when it comes. Everybody talks about that 83 class of quarterbacks. We have a few more Super Bowls than those guys. So we're a little bit ahead of that bunch right now still.
By the way, and you still have some of the top records there at Notre Dame. You were also you were All-American. You were also in academics too. So even then you were very, focused, clearly not just obviously an incredible athlete, but very focused academically. As you mentioned, you're runner-up of the Heisman, and then you move on. Of course, you go to professional football.
Rita, let me digress for 1 second. When you talk about the academic All-American, and this is something I try and stress to a lot of young people. Too many times, young people, you look at your physical gifts, whether it's whatever physical gift the good Lord has granted you, you look at the physical gift, throw, run, jump, beauty, whatever it might be, strength, that can all go away. But what you put in between your ears, the education that you get, no one can take away from you. And that ultimately will allow you to be able to move forward in your life. When you stop and think about professional football players, the average length of time that someone enters professional football and plays is a little over 3.5 years. So basically by the age of 25, if let's say you entered at 21 or 22 years old, by the age of 25, 26 years old, your professional career is over in football in particular. What are you going to do? What do you have to fall back on? Hopefully your education. That's why I stress education to so many people, to be able to go out, continue to get it, continue to learn. I have a favorite saying, Rita, the day you stop learning is the day you stop living. And that applies across the board to every age group.
Absolutely. Now, by the way, I do have to ask about, there are a few exceptions. There's what is 43-year-old Tom Brady out there, right?
Yeah, I know. And then Drew Brees is going to be, I think, 42. Yes. I mean, and Tom, and I'll say this unequivocally, Tom is the greatest quarterback that ever played this game. And if anybody questioned it, just because he was in New England for all those years and had the 6 championships there, he changed and went to another team. And believe me, you talk about one person having an impact on an organization. I said when Tom signed there that he would bring accountability to everyone, to everybody in the front office, to everybody in the building, to the players, to the coaches, because of his work ethic. You don't have to say a lot as a leader, but everybody's looking at you, the way you conduct yourself, the way you carry yourself. And another thing, and I'll give you another one of my momisms, is my mom used to tell me this: it's never what you say to somebody, Joey, it's how you say it to them. And I think we all have to be conscious how we speak to one another. There's different tones, there's different inflections. You can sense anger, you can sense disappointment, you can sense joy in just the way we communicate with people.
And speaking of communication, we fast forward, of course, here you are, you make it to the NFL, played 12 great years, of course, with the Washington team, unbelievable times. But you have a great lesson, and I think this is important to share with everybody, about Joe Gibbs, Coach Joe Gibbs. And early on, you didn't think he wanted you as the quarterback.
I know he did.
And then you go to his house, right? You knock on his house. There's a story, I remember you sharing this with me. You knock on his house. Tell us that story, and there's a great lesson behind that.
Again, I had 12 wonderful years in Washington, but I spent 3 terrific years in Toronto playing for the Argonauts too.
Yeah, you sure did. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I would have stayed in Canada and played up there past my contract that expired in 84 or 74 had the economics worked out. But, I guess I ask people, what's important to you? Is your job important to you? What would you do to keep your job? And we were 0-5 in 1981. And I wasn't Joe Gibbs. He was my third coach. He didn't draft me, so I wasn't his. And he was disappointed. He was going to bench me in the next week. I found this out later on, but I
Oh,
drove
wow.
to his house and we sat down. You know, you sit in a meeting sometimes, Rita, and somebody's talking, but you don't get the sense that they're talking to you. Well, if you're in a quarterback meeting room and there's only one other guy and and you don't feel like that coach is talking to you, there is an issue. So I drove to his house, knocked on his door, sat down, and I said, Coach, you know, we need to talk. And he had worked himself. I mean, he slept at Redskin Park. He worked himself to an nth degree. I mean, he just put all his time in. And we sat down and we talked. And he said, look, I want somebody who's committed to being my quarterback. I said, I will be. He said, Joe, you've got restaurants, TV shows, radio shows. You got all this stuff going on. I said, I'll get rid of everything. If you want me to, if that's what it takes for me to prove to you I can be your quarterback and want to be your quarterback, I'll do it. But before I do that, give me a chance. Just give me a chance to be able to try and prove to you that, you know, I can be your guy. And from that point forward, and the remainder of 81, we went 8-3. In 82, we went 12-1, won a world championship. In 83, we went 16-3, went back to a world championship. I believe we were 11-5 or 6 in 84, and then I got hurt midway through 85. But that conversation was very pivotal to my relationship with Joe, and it allowed me to play quarterback for that football team for a number of years. And I think people have to ask yourself, how important is what you're doing to you? And what are you willing to do to be able to keep that job? What are you willing to, what kind of efforts are you willing to put forth? And what kind of passion do you have for what you're doing?
You know, you talked about that pivotal moment, Joe, in 1985, and so many people saw it. I mean, everybody sort of has a moment in life, different things that happened to them. Yours was so public. Here it was 1985. It's Monday Night Football. Millions of people are watching, and you get blindsided by Lawrence Taylor, and it was just, you know, one of the most ferocious players. What went through your mind at that moment? Because your leg was broken. I mean, and everybody watched it. And I, as your friend, my heart, I still think about that moment. We had so many fans who wrote in because you were the guy on top of it all. In that moment, did you realize what had happened at that moment?
Well, I realized it hurt. I can tell you that it hurt.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But it's interesting. The body is you find things out when you're injured as much as we do in sports. You find out just what an incredible machine that you have in your body. And from my knee down, my leg was completely numb. I remember when they loaded me on the gurney to take me from the ambulance gurney to the hospital gurney, they didn't pick up the lower right part of my right leg. And so I'm lying there, and all of a sudden my leg just drops down. Didn't feel a thing. I turned to one of the attendants. I said, excuse me, can you pick up the rest of me and put it on here? And didn't feel a thing. But I didn't think my career was over at that time. I'd broken my leg in Canada in 1972 and came back. And so I thought this was going to be another one of those processes. I did have an open compound fracture, very similar from what I've read that happened to Tiger. It happened to Dak Prescott. We know what Alex Smith went through, his great comeback after 2 years of getting ready to play football again. Paul George in basketball, Kevin Ware, a young man at Louisville, another one had a similar type of an injury. And, you know, just real quick on Tiger, I hope and pray that, you know, he's able to do the things that he wants to do. He's certainly proven his mental toughness. If anybody can come back from injury, it's going to be Tiger Woods. I don't care what age it's at. Like, and you brought up a great point with Tom Brady. You know, he's 43. Tiger, I think, is 45-ish, somewhere around there. It doesn't matter. I mean, he has such great will and determination that we can all learn from. But for me, it was, I didn't think it was over. And then what really the harsh reality of our business hit me about 3 weeks later. After I got out of the hospital, I went to, you know, our facility, and I was going back to my locker. And I walked up to my locker, and Steve Bartkowski, the former Atlanta Falcon quarterback, was sitting there. He had joined the team. My entire 12-year career was in a box in the equipment room. It would be paramount to somebody having an office or a cubicle. And, you know, you just accumulate things. You know, I had chin straps that were bloodied in a Dallas Cowboy game, and I had stitches and all kinds of different things, pictures of the family, things that people had sent me. They were all in a box. My entire career was in a box in the equipment room. And that's when the harsh reality of the business hits you, that you're very replaceable. And that's why you have to work as hard as you can to keep the position that you have. Do the things that you need to do and pray that you can stay healthy enough and continue to do them.
You know, it's amazing, Joe, you know, that obviously was obviously a devastating moment, but you are always such an optimist, your attitude, and you use that moment. And when people say you're an overachiever, I mean, you think about you go, you of course tried to come back, you worked very deeply at, you know, at rehab, and then said, okay, where can I use these incredible skills that you have on so many levels, Joe Theismann? You become an NFL analyst, and not only just any NFL analyst. You get 2 Emmys, you do commercials, you're doing so many. You were in obviously tons of movies too as well. But you said, I'm going to use these skills and reinvent myself. There's a great lesson there, I think, for so many people. And you also said at that moment too, that you looked inside yourself and talked about also, and this was something you touched on earlier, Joe, about giving back. And it's something you believe so much in your life. And of course, we do here on the Global Service Institute, and you on our wonderful honorary advisory board, Joe. You have always given back. You were NFL Man of the Year, by the way, when you were there, top of your game for community service. So this is something you believed in, but you really turbocharged that and do so much with places like St. Jude, United Way, so many things. Why is that? Why is service so deeply important to you, Joe?
I think first of all, I've been very blessed to have the careers that I've had, both in broadcasting and as a speaker, and of course in football. And I just really feel like, you know, when you reach a certain point in life, the way you define success is not by what you have, but what you can do for others. I had a buddy of mine come up to me one day and he said, Joe, do you think you're a success? I said, well, you know, I spent 23 years in broadcasting. I guess longevity says I had a degree of success. I managed to be a part of a world champion and be an MVP in football. And so, yeah, I guess I was there. And then been speaking now for over 40 years, trying to share my experiences with people and have them look at their life and see if it makes sense for them, maybe save them from some of the pitfalls that I went through. So I guess you could say, you know, I was success. He said, actually, Joe, what you did is you aspired to be great at those things. You aspired to be a great broadcaster. You aspired to be a motivational speaker. You aspired to be a great football player. Those were aspirations. He said, true success comes when you reach a certain point in your life and you start giving back. And it started for me with my daughter, Amy, back in 1973, I think it was. No, I'm sorry. It was 1974, I believe. Amy Lynn, she had an atrial septal defect in her heart. And I remember going to the Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C., the old one downtown. And I'll never forget walking in and seeing my daughter, you know, just with tubes running out of her body. And it was one of the most jarring moments of my life, because, I mean, it's out of your hands. I'm a person who I'm a fixer. I like trying to fix things. I couldn't fix this. And Dr. Frank Midgley performed the surgery on Amy. And I'll never forget, I shook his hand and it was like cold steel. And then when I walked into the recovery and I saw Amy Lynn with the mask on her face and all the tubes running out of her body, and she looked up at me and she said, Daddy. And she closed her eyes. And she was fine. I mean, but you know, that moment basically said, you know, we're so blessed in our lives. We're so blessed with our health. We're so blessed with relationships. You know, we're so blessed to be able to do what we can to help our children grow and be wonderful people, be caring people, be respectful people. You know, that's a word that I think sort of has escaped society to a degree now, is respect for one another, respect for one another's opinions, respect for one another, no matter your race, creed, color, religious preference, doesn't matter. Just the respect that has to be there. And so, you know, that moment sort of opened my eyes to a lot of things. And then, of course, you know, when it was all taken away from me, what I thought was important, the world of sports, my career as a football player, when that was gone, I really did a lot of soul searching. You know, it took me a while to look at who I wanted to be going forward in my life. But more importantly, what could I do to help others? It's like, you know, it's like our conversation today. I hope through this conversation today, there are people out there that'll look at their life and say, I can do this. I can help someone else. I can share something else. So let's do something for someone. We all want to do something for ourselves. We all have those goals. Like I said, write them down. Part of writing down a goal would be, what can I do for somebody today? And then every day. What can you do for someone today and every day? It might just be a simple smile. You ever see anybody not happy if there's a smile on their face? Anybody with a pet and anybody with a baby in their hand. What do you do when you see that? You smile. I mean, it's just, they're happy moments in our lives, and we need more of them.
Absolutely. Beautiful message. And Joe, I know you just have a few minutes left. I'm going to rapid fire a couple short questions and short answers from you, because we had so many fans from all over the place asking you questions. I want to make sure I get to a few more of these. This one is from Mark McDermott, and he asks, is there a person or something in your life at the time that gave you the mental strength to overcome what you went through when that accident happened? Was there a sort of a key person that you turned to?
I really pulled from within. I go all the way back to my senior year in high school, when there was an article in a newspaper that said little Joey Theismann would get killed at Notre Dame. And, you can call it spite, you can call it pride, whatever you want to call it. But that sort of set my mind from a determined standpoint to not allow other people to control my life. And basically, when my leg was broken, Lawrence had broken my leg. And, by the way, we are friends and we played golf together. We do play golf together. I do not let him stand on my left side. I want to be able to see him all the time. He has to be in front of me where I can see him. Once I couldn't find him, and that's what happened to me. But it was taken away from me. But I just think that you have to be able to set your mind. That's really, I think, where the mindset started. I wasn't going to let somebody tell me what I could or could not do. And I think the single most trait that everybody can possess across the board is mental toughness. You're going to go through some tough times. You're going to have to climb mountains that you can't see the top of. But it doesn't mean you don't try and climb the mountain. It doesn't mean you don't try and go back. I have friends of mine come up to me all the time. He says, Joe, you're such an up guy. You're always bouncing around. You're always doing this and doing that. Do you ever have a down day? Yeah, I do. Life's peaks and valleys. They go like this. I just choose not to stay in the valley very long.
No, you don't, my friend. And I was another great question, by the way. Father and son duo sent in a question. I love this to us here at the Global Service Institute. One is, this is from John in California, who asked, how did you define success as a college athlete, NFL player? How did it change both the college and professional sort of? How do you define it today, those two? And then, by the way, his son Kevin asked, and I love this, what's your favorite website and what's your second favorite website? So first, sort of the compare. Let's do Kevin. Let's take the Kevin's first.
Oh God!
Kevin, what's your favorite? Is there a favorite website and why? And what's your second one?
Well, is our favorite website? Was it?
It's got to be globalserviceinstitute.org.
I was just going to say globalserviceinstitute.org. I think that's one of them.
And your second favorite one is globalserviceinstitute.org too.
Well, I have. I'm still. I guess you could say in the infinitesimal stages when it comes to, I should say the infancy stages when it comes to the internet. As far as websites go, Kevin, that's your world now. I mean, I use Google a lot because I got to look up things and check things out. I've never really thought about that. I really have to stop and think about it. But I just, the world of technology and computers is new to me. I'm excited about learning more and more about the things that are there and some of the websites that are out there. So I can't really answer that specifically. And
how about John, how about the college? Yeah, how about from John, the college athlete?
I was just going to say that John.
Yeah,
I was a skinny little kid. How did I define success? First of all, academically, I had to stay eligible to be able to play football. So defining success for me was staying eligible and getting my grades right. I went out on 2 dates my 2 years in college at the University of Notre Dame. Same young lady. I dedicated myself to my academics and my athletics. I learned a great lesson that if you want something, there's a price to be paid at times. You can't always do exactly what you want to do. Sometimes you have to extend yourself in a different direction to accomplish the things you want. But it goes back again to the mindset of what do you want? And then what price are you willing to pay to go get it? For me. And so how did I define success? Certainly, you look at a scoreboard, you win or lose. there's a degree of success in that. But more importantly, how did I play today? How did I help the team win? What did I do to help the team win? I used to have a saying in my locker when I played ball, and I had this at the professional level, not the collegiate level. It was real simple. And it went like this. You never have to be the reason a team wins. You just can't be the reason it loses. You never have to be the reason a team wins. You just can't be the reason it loses. And that was a reminder to me that both mentally and physically, I had to make the right kind of decisions.
Speaking of teams, of course, you were a part of the Washington football team, an amazing team for 12 years. We have a question here, and this is from Richard, who is an academic there and one of the executives there at Long Island University, with your favorite website, globalserviceinstitute.org, Joe, of course. We're going to have it tattooed all over you, okay? And he asked, and this is a question from a couple folks. He's a lifelong, of course, Joe Theismann fan, as we all are. He's a lifelong Washington football fan. What is your feeling, Joe, on dropping the Redskins name and mascot? And do you think the organization waited too long? And any suggestions for a new name?
First of all, I'll answer the second part of that. I haven't thought about it. I believe what the Washington football team has done in calling themselves the Washington football team at this point makes a lot of sense. Instead of rushing into some name where somebody's going to be upset over it, and you just want to make sure that you do all your due diligence. And I think that's what they're doing. And I think it's a very smart move. As far as the name being changed, there have been people wanting this name changed for years. I know I played as a Washington Redskin. I was very proud to be able to represent, the football team and really the Native American nations. When we won the Super Bowl, I received a Chiefs headdress as a gift and an acknowledgement of it. I just think it's a sign of time and society and where we are and the things that people look at. It's part of what it is. I'm not a rear view mirror guy. The name has been changed. I'm excited about the future of the young players that are a part of the Washington football team. We have our legacy. We have our world championships. We have the fans that still stay very loyal to our football team. But now it's time for a new beginning. And that's, I guess, maybe you'd almost look at it and say, that's where we are today in society. It's almost a new beginning for all of us. And I think we have to respect what everybody feels and go forward from there. But it's, for me, it is basically what it is, and we move forward from it. Speaking
of new beginnings, we have a whole bunch of football questions, but I'm just going to ask you
I'll answer
real quick here. Yeah, yep, you got it. But this is from the Redskins Addict, so they are diehard Redskins fans and Washington fans. You are widely regarded as the last franchise quarterback in the Redskins' Washington football history. If you were the current GM, the general manager of the Washington football team, what quarterback would be a priority pick at 19? Would you pick that one at 19? Or, this is interesting because, of course, there's so many questions. You talked about Smith earlier. Would you continue to build a team for a future quarterback to inherit? So do you get the quarterback or do you build the team? That's a great question.
I don't think you're going to get a quarterback in the first round at the 19th pick. I don't think is somebody that you probably are going to get. I think we have other needs on the offensive side of the ball if you're a Washington fan, and another wide receiver, some depth at tight end, always offensive linemen. Those are areas they can look. Always a defensive back somewhere, a safety possibly. So, I mean, there's lots of holes that need to be filled, and I would not trade that pick. I think some of the prices out there would be too expensive. People are bantering around Russell Wilson's name, Sam Darnold with the Jets, excuse me, and then, of course, Deshaun Watson down in Houston. I think the price is going to be too steep. You look at what we've been able to do with those first-round picks: Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Daron Payne, Montez Sweat. You look at those are all the last four first-round picks. They're extremely productive in the foundation of what I think is going to be a terrific defense. Was last year, you can probably be better this year. So I would use that pick in another way. Now, if you can sign a free agent, I think Taylor Heineke can play. Now, we don't really know. Hopefully, we'll get to an off-season where you have the OTAs, the off-season training camps, where you have the mini camps, where you have the training camp, where Ron has a chance to evaluate. But as a general manager right now, I think everything is available and open to me. And we certainly have put together a heck of a group of experienced general managers and presidents of organizations now that are in the management part of our football team. So I'm excited about the direction we're going in. I think it was great that we made the playoffs. I don't care what people say about the record. We got there, and that was important. And I thought Taylor accounted himself extremely well for a guy that had really been with the team, 3 weeks before he had a chance to play in a playoff game. And of course, Alex's situation, you just can't say enough about the man, Alex Smith, what he accomplished, what he did to come back. He had to be able to walk
break,
on
and
right.
He had serious injury too. Yeah.
I mean, it was just 17 surgeries, all the infections that he went through, and all of those things. But he has an economic cap number that is huge. So, what do you do? What does he do? I think that's probably the biggest question that the team has right now, because it affects them from a personnel standpoint as well as the economics.
Very quickly, your favorite Notre Dame memory, the Fighting Irish. How lucky were you to be there? And a question from Mike Dorso asking about that.
Mike, running out onto the football field my sophomore year as a part of the Notre Dame football team. I was a punt returner. I was a punt returner for 2 years in the NFL. I was a punt returner and started that my first 7 games my sophomore year at the University of Notre Dame. But I'll never forget running into that stadium, and the student body is on the right, the band is on the left. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It's exhilarating. And the stadium's 35,000 seats larger right now than it was. And I loved what the university did. They kept the integrity of the original stadium and built around it. So you still get that feel when you get in there. But running into that stadium and just the energy and the excitement and the enthusiasm was something that always has stayed with me.
Do you believe Super Bowl next year will have a full stadium? So many obviously have been coming back with sports. We've been seeing piecemeal in terms of participation in stadiums. We saw the Super Bowl last time. Obviously, they did beautiful tribute to first responders, and they had a number of them there. I thought that was so fabulous, Joe. I know you were down there, but also cutouts, also in the audience to sort of fill this. Will we see a full stadium, do you think, for the next Super Bowl?
I think Super Bowl 56 will be complete with the fans. I believe unbelievable job by the NFL and the players and the coaches and everybody involved by getting an entire season in. The NFL benefited to a degree because of what we saw in baseball, basketball, and hockey, and some of the protocols in college. And I think it allowed the NFL to study them and learn and modify and do what they needed to do. But from a scheduling standpoint, from a player standpoint, respecting the fact that they had to do certain things over that 6-month period to be able to continue to play, my hat's off to all of them.
And my last question, this is you've had such a storied career on so many levels. This question sort of exemplifies this. It's from Bradley Clark, who is a diehard fan of yours, as so many are, Joe. And he says that the TV show American Gladiators, another layer of your life, you hosted it for the first half of season 1 back in 1989. He's a huge fan of you and American Gladiators. He asked why you left and do you regret leaving that? Are there any other regrets?
No, I don't have regrets. I look at them as experiences. Every day is a wonderful experience. I love doing American Gladiators. I did it with Mike Adamle. Mike has been a broadcaster in Chicago for many, many years and was a Chicago Bear. Mike and I did the original shows. I still remember when we built some of those platforms and the jousting platforms and everything. I still remember screws, 6-inch screws sticking up out of the ground. We didn't think about covering them up. The obstacle course that we did, the game that we had shooting tennis balls at one another. It was so much fun to be able to do it. As a matter of fact, I think they're going to do a documentary on American Gladiators. And when I really stop and think about it, American Gladiators is really sort of the grandfather of American Ninja Warriors. When you really think about the show, I mean, that's basically what you're doing. You're pitting an individual sometimes against one another. And sometimes against obstacles that seem, I look at the things that they're doing now and I'm going, holy mackerel, has this come a long way? I left the show because I had other commitments that I needed to fulfill at that time. But I certainly enjoyed doing it. I love the experience. I love the fact that we were the first to sort of create that. And that's exciting for me, is to be in on the ground floor of something, to be able to watch and then now watch it grow to what it has after all these years. And it's fun to watch. I love the competitors. I love the way they do it. It's a worldwide competition, and we had a great array of great athletes that participated in American Gladiators. Of course, it was like Marvel Comics before Marvel Comics just took off. We had everybody dressed in all kinds of outfits and everything. It was fun.
And I'm going to throw one final question because it's one of my favorite parts of your book. And everybody, by the way, you got to get the book, How to Be a Champion Every Day. It's an amazing blueprint, and especially as we have been going through the pandemic. And not just if you're an athlete, if you just want to be a champion and succeed every day. You finish the book, Joe, by talking about a letter to yourself that you wrote. And it's something that's sort of the a la Derek Jeter formula. But why is that important? And what's your message to folks on service and something you say to yourself in terms of service and in terms of giving back? Because I look at your life, Joe, of all the things, of all the titles you've had. We talked about, Notre Dame and of course, in the Canadian Football League. And of course, at the Washington football team, MVP, Super Bowl. You have had such an unbelievable career. You are so proud of giving back and also inspiring the next generation. Tell us about what would the letter be that for all the folks who are listening out here that you would write to them?
Actually, it was Derek Jeter. I did that probably, I don't know, maybe 7-8 years ago. We did that. It could be even a little more. It was a letter to my younger self. And really, it was looking back and reflecting on the things that have happened in my life, both the good and the bad, and sort of talking to myself about what you can expect as you go through your life. And I think we can all do that. It's a very interesting exercise to be able to sit down and write a letter to your younger self. If you could share the wisdom of the years that you've put into your life at this point and share it with your younger self, what would you tell that person? What would you say to that person? I thought it was an incredible concept. And, Derek did they created an unbelievable, I think, opportunity for people to reflect on their lives, but not just us as in the world of athletics or where else. I think everybody in our life can take a chance. You reach a point where you can write a letter to your younger self. It helps you not only figure out where you've been, but I think it also helps you figure out where you want to go.
And have meaning in your life.
Absolutely.
In terms of service, Joe.
Sure.
I mean, that I think epitomizes so much of why is that such a core of who you are?
I think, like I said before, I think we're here on this earth to be able to serve people, not to be served. I mean, we all grow in different areas, and one is what can we do for other people? I mean, the Marine Corps Marathon is something I participate in now as well. St. Jude's, member of their athletic advisory board. As I am a board of the Global Services Institute. I just think that our purpose and to be able to be a complete person, to complete yourself is to do something for someone else and affect their life in a positive way. And that's who I am. That's the core now of who I am, to be able to try and help people as much as we can.
Joe Theismann, thank you so much for inspiring all of us and joining us here today. It's really such a pleasure, and there's so many life lessons that we can learn from you. And of course, one of your great titles, not just MVP, but NFL Man of the Year for Community Service, and you epitomize that in so many ways. Thank you, Joe, so much.
Thank you, Rita. Great to catch up with you. And everybody, thank you out there. Wherever you are in the world, please stay safe and remember to respect one another.
Absolutely. And everybody, please also make sure you check out our website for other programs that we have and also all our other future events. It's globalserviceinstitute.org, globalserviceinstitute.org, and we will talk with you and see you very soon.